me say that it is an honor to have met my other colleagues again, some of them for the first time, whose writings and what I hear about them, Hiba especially, which all of us need to take a moment and sing their praises. Ask Allah to bless them, and Allah will bless them if we make them successful. I've been moving around from tables trying to get you all to tell me what you want and some of what you need, and it's been interesting. I don't often get a chance to speak with members of the community because I spend all my time in court, either adjudicating marriage contracts gone bad or trying to, well, not prevent terrorism because they need a little, but to explain the Muslim positions on things, and oftentimes trying to undo some of the things that Muslims say when they're under pressure out there in the public spaces. But what I was asked to talk to you today about is academia and how you get there, because I do expect to see some of you there before I retire. One of the things I try to do, and I think I do fairly well, is mentor. And however it is, I'm going to throw out some things, because I like to be in conversation. I lecture too much and my quarter is over. I don't have to teach anything really to anybody. So I'm relaxing with all of you and hoping to learn from you what you need for me to do. Western academia is an interesting place. And I thought I would give you some statistics because I have my colleague Sarah here from the UK. And in the US and the UK, only 20% in each place of the professors are women. Still in the 21st century. In the UK, only 7% of those professors, the tenured faculty, are women. Interesting. In the US, only 4% of them are. I tried to look, and I called a bunch of people to find out how many of those women were full professors, and it's less than 1%. So in that, I'm feeling good today. They don't fire me tomorrow. And we spend a great deal of time trying to get women to apply for jobs, trying to get them on faculties and to assist them in getting tenure, which is a little bit of a task itself. And then I was asked to talk a little bit about how I got here. Islamic studies is not my first career. My first careers are in pharmacy and medicine. And I got bamboozled because the problem was African Americans being able to conquer graduate studies. And I say bamboozle, and that's why I'm convinced that I will see all of you in my wake, because if I can do it, anybody besides Possum and a couple other things can do it, because you all have, I've listened to the conversations, far more intellect than I for this subject. Don't even look like that. For me, it was arduous. Coming from a science background where I'm more interested in delivering babies or sewing you up, to sitting down and engaging men in what I kind of considered my own very personal spiritual path. When I went to graduate school, there was only one university in the United States that offered Islamic studies, and that was Temple University in Philadelphia. And in Temple's program, There are two things you have to do. You do your stateside study, and then you have to go overseas to do your law, your Quranic studies, etc. And I have to admit, you don't want to know what I had to say about the Muslim world or the method of teaching. Because I found all of it, on one hand, exceptionally difficult, didn't have to be that way. But on the other hand, what is it you call in psychology when you can't do something well? Yeah, I do have a learning disability. And it was for memorizing things by rote. So, I'm sitting, a fully grown woman, lots of mouth, in classes in the madrasa, trying to memorize stuff. And I think every man I met wanted to get rid of me in a hurry, so they kept moving me along. I think that the task does not end there. Getting a PhD, and we also have to get licenses along the way, which enable us to teach in law or Quran or this, that, or the other, are at once enabling, mostly demeaning, and you do all of this without support. And I think if there was a thing my sister colleagues would ask, is that you all pay attention to us. We're out there often by ourselves. I spend about 12 hours a day reading because I have to translate, across 2 or 3 languages. And so I don't get out much. But we do need support, because when we take stands on issues that affect all of you, born here or here or somewhere else, we become targets for others. Without community support, it becomes extremely hazardous. We live, many of us, with security from the CIA and the FBI and our own personal bodyguards. I didn't think I needed them here today. We catch hell on the internet. We try, but we can't do it successfully and with accuracy and authority. Speak for you unless you're constantly speaking to us. Okay? We may get it wrong, but without the cross communication, it becomes almost impossible. One of the things I like to think of myself as is a scholar activist. And I like to put Islamic studies into practice. There's an important nexus that many of us miss in figuring out how to interpret things. In Islam, I've heard, and I asked about this last night, one of the things that rankles me, and those of you who do work with me know, is the word convert. Let me say a few things about it. Convert is a Christian term that sits inside of a constellation of things. Okay? It implies that when you move from one religious tradition or one worldview to another, that it is instantaneous and the result of an epiphany of some, God met you on the road. It also carries with it certain notions that are not in Islam. One of those notions that I rail against is the notion of sin. Because sin in Christianity has its own cosmology, which fits Christianity rather well. It does not, however, fit Islam. There are at least, correct me if I'm wrong, 9 terms in the Quran that signify different levels of obedience. And it is important to understand where you are in that constellation of obediences. You know? We have a habit of talking about things as the halal and the haram. Two extremes. Loads of stuff in the middle, which we rarely talk about. But nevertheless, with sin, I don't really think you want to be there. It's not a term used casually. And unless you're going to get saved by Jesus, I really don't think you want to be there. Okay? And there's some other terms which in our attempt to make what we're talking about Islamically understandable to our various American audiences or English-speaking audiences, we tend to use, but we're corrupting the beauty and the nature of the Quran. So I'm just going to say, I think we need to think about the convert. Revert is worse. Sound like you got out of jail and then you went back and got out again. You know? So I think that, and I mean, it is a thing where in Islam, one of the things that brought all of us here today is that primary relationship of the Mawlid. You know, one very primary relationship. You shouldn't focus on people's where they came from or this and that and the other. You have certain duties and obligations. Everybody you meet is not going to be your friend, but they do have some obligations to you that you need to hold them to and they need to hold themselves to. And in Islam, one of the things that Al-Rawiya is doing is it's reinstituting that primary relationship in its most fundamental form, the teacher and the student, with an understanding that the teacher remains a student and that the student will become a teacher. Do you see how it moves? Show up at a conference, take your notes, go home, scratch, and do something else. You have a responsibility to keep learning, but then also to teach. You don't get to sit on it. But there's also, and somebody else, I don't remember which table I was, said, well, I'm going to learn something so I can act on it. And I've always found that meant acting with some caveats behind it. Because you cannot learn and not act upon it. I think, I loved her talk about the women and the marital right. I find that one of the problems, because I adjudicate a lot of them, is in the contract. And it makes me ask questions about what are y'all scared of? Put in your contract, you are a gift to some dude. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I mean, seriously. And if he can't get it together, get another dude. You know, I mean, you gotta put it in the contract. Because after stuff goes south, it is very hard for us to come back. I watch, you know, the mob is becoming a very bad word in the courts. You know, the women write things like they're understanding the mar in some ways as an insurance policy against something or the other. I don't know that that's the way you should understand it. People are deferring dowries till they would have had to die 3-4 times to get it. You know, that's not what's supposed to be happening. It's not that it's supposed to have everything but the kitchen sink in it, but it's supposed, it functions in two ways. One is you're supposed to have a clear understanding of who you are, what your needs are. And that self-assessment should reflect itself in any contract that you write. I've seen women getting married and their mahar is a Quran. They can buy a Quran themselves. Well, I'll give them one. Do you understand? That is not the functioning there. It is, in a sense, a payment for exclusive rights to your sexuality. And if that's worth nothing to you, then you can't cry about it later. What else did I hear? Oh, we were yesterday. We at one of the tables had a little conversation, which is an extension of what Dr. Malika said earlier, and that is women's rights. And I guess I railed a little bit about you trying to find your rights, because that's an English term that really functions in Western societies in a way that makes me a little crazy, because it borders on the conversations that those of us in academia, Dr. Hibbert can agree, one of the things we've met is feminism. And while I don't care to explore what women think they are or are not doing, the constellation in a religious tradition out of which they function, that of Christianity, has a different set of premises. And equality makes sense to seek equality. The number of men I do not want to be equal to is very, very long. Okay? In either their intellect or their physical prowess. I think that women have some gifts that they've not fully explored. They not only have intellect, they not only have physical prowess, as demonstrated last night as I watched a young woman, I don't know if she's here, manipulate this baby carriage, 3 bags and something else, and still open the door for me and some other old folks. They have all the physical prowess they need, but they have something that is very, very special. Many, or should I say most, can mother. Not necessarily have kids, because all of us can't have kids. And if you're dying to have some, I have some you can have. But we can mother, and we're always mothering. Whether we've given birth or not, we mother till we die. We start mothering, about 14? And we just continue mothering and bringing people under our wings in many ways. I think also, make sure I cover what she wanted me to cover. The young lady who's a freshman should be in my class. We have to do a lot more about learning about each other's cultures. One of the wonderful things about being in this place is we get a chance to meet Muslims from all over the world. And just like others in society, we take no advantage of it. We don't share meals. We don't share wisdoms. We don't share ways of doing things. We don't share what you read and how did you get through this. One of the women who helped me most with one of my kids was an old Arab grandmother. And she was much nicer to it than I was. But she gave me a whole different perspective on how to do things, how I could do things. And that's the kind of wisdom that you reach across cultures to get. That's the tribes coming to know one another. Some of us are, people speak different languages. They may not speak English. Gesturing works well. It's something about mothering and taking care of the young. We're starting a project in Chicago this summer when I get back, where I've asked some of the, especially the Latino moms, grandmoms, who are not Muslim. Their kids are Muslim. And some of the immigrant mothers to help me out. What's another word for Uchi with the slightly faster generation who are having kids. Their own mothers are maybe 12, 13 years older than they. Their own mothers are trying to be 17. So I said, it doesn't matter in this instance that the face of the help is, I don't want to go around and they got on all this stuff. Fine. But if we can provide the mothering, and the grandmothers don't need to speak English. They speak Arabic, Urdu, and Spanish, largely. Who cares? They know more about mothering than these 12, 13, and 14-year-olds. So we're pulling them in under the auspices of a little bit of health care. The grandmothers will encourage them, leave your baby, go to school. You don't have to pay for the health care. And that's something I would think about in terms of reaching across cultures, to think about how to get the wisdom, but also to bond in a different kind of way. I think we have fallen into, and I'll say fallen into because some of the folk in here have known me for the last 40 years. We've fallen into, for the Americans, being un-American. One of the things that helped Islam grow in this country was our willingness to reach across our Islam with a hand toward many. Once we secret ourselves behind our veils and doors, we cease to do the outreach. Back then, the Saudis had decided to call it dawah. So we didn't call it that, but we reached anyway. The masajid were full of as many non-Muslims as there were Muslims. And we need to go back to some of that. The last part, and I'm going to cut it short because I've talked long enough, is how does one mentor? At DePaul, in our Islamic World Studies program, I think last counting we have about 32 courses. And they range from courses in the Quran and its interpretation, to courses in sectarian movements, courses in hadith, several courses in the law, we have courses on women. We have Islamic history, we have Islamic art and architecture. I'm trying to think. We have courses on Muslims in various cultures. And I was trying to think, as an answer to a request, how we could make some of them available to you as members of this group. And I think I can do it for those. But then I thought about that, and everybody doesn't want to go to school. Some folk would like to know, as the sister back here read, we do a different kind of reading, but I can make, I don't know. You just got that? Oh, that's fine. How we can do some popular stuff. We can make a book club online. That's not difficult. And I can ask Tiba and some others who are here, we can make some book choices from books we assign to students, but we can do it at levels. For those of you working on master's degrees and PhDs, that's one kind of reading, different kind of reading. There are plenty of Muslim women who are cultural anthropologists, and I can make sure you get some of those texts. Yay! For those who want to do, let's say, readings in spirituality, we have a couple of faculty who can do that. We have faculty who can do advanced Urdu, Arabic, Persian, French, German, and Malay. So we can work it out to assist you however it is we can assist you. If we don't have it, let me know and we'll try to get it for you. The other part of what I wanted to talk about, and I'm being told I need to hurry up, is what I would like to further ask of you. We don't have folk tales. You know, the Egyptians got them, the Syrians got them, the Chinese have them, the Caribbean people have them. We don't have folk tales. At least half of this room tells stories, probably more. Would you please write it down so I can have it, so we can publish it in a book of folk tales? If you don't raise children with tales of their own, they don't have anything. I mean, my grandson reads, what's that, the Wimpy Kid? The Wimpy Kid? Something. See, everybody knows. You know, and they're on book what?
Right.
7. You know, some of the folk whose kids are as old as mine, the girls read the Babysitter's Club. All 83, because I paid for them, 83 books. It is time to develop, you know, you can put the values, put the knowledge in storybook. And they shouldn't just be for Muslim kids, because the obligation of a Muslim in any society is to set an example. Okay? You can't set an example if nobody can read the text, unless they're Muslim. Okay? So we need the context. The only thing I ask is that whoever you decide to make the central character, keep that person as the it animal person as the central character. For those of you who write other kinds of literature, please let us know. I'm an editor for Brill. I'm one of the editors for Oxford. I edit a lot of stuff, much of which is not written by Muslims, and very little of it by Muslim women. If you write it, we will work with you to get it done. For those of you who do American law, we have the Journal of Islamic Law and Culture, but you don't have to do law. You can write about polygamy. I need an article on polygamy. Wake everybody up. You know, I mean, you can write about things going on in the community. We'll help you. It's a full editorial board. These professors are committed to helping you lift the language. It may not look like what you wrote when you finish with it, but it'll have the same intent, because it's important. You know, it can't rely upon just us. The number of Muslim women scholars who do Islamic studies, and I've added Middle Eastern studies to that, it's very tiny in this country. They need help. They need help with the research. They need for you to volunteer to help. We need, most of you know that there are, as of yesterday morning, 24 states trying to ban the Sharia. Much of that comes from people who don't know, trying to explain what the Sharia is. We have Tennessee and 7 more states up to ban wudu in public spaces. Tennessee, don't do wudu in a public space in Tennessee, because I hate Tennessee. Well, it came, you know, its impetus came from Murfreesboro, but then it spread like wildfire. You cannot afford to not keep up with the news. Okay? You must, there's where is the monitor from? Egypt or Jordan? The monitor. You know the monitor? It's not Al-Rawiya. Anyway, we'll try to leave you. We'll email you a list. You've got to keep up because a part of being Muslim is to be informed and to be aware. You've always got to be aware of your surroundings. The assault against Islam and Muslims in this country has left the front pages, and it has moved to page, 32. But the assault is deadly. Those of you who are interested in research, we need all the help we can get because there are too few of us that work on the issues. The kids, you've heard about the ban of the scarf in France. There are states which are trying to affect that. And we're meeting with those senators. We're trying to talk to people. You know, the women, fortunately for them, do not keep bombs or the devices under those scarves. But it's more so about the attack against children, because the women send their children to schools in scarves. But the women are not at school to protect those children against the assault of principals and teachers. So as one who I was very teeny tiny during the Civil Rights Movement, don't send your kid anywhere where you're not going with or right behind them to protect them. They're in classrooms where teachers are verbally assaulting them. They're talking about not only their religion, they're talking about their mama and their daddy and what you believe. Their principals are doing all kinds of stuff. We have more stuff across the board, and this is with CARE and ISNA and ICNA and whole bunches of organizations which are not equipped to do that, depending upon academics to provide them with the fodder. We can't keep up with the assaults, verbal. And when you have verbal assaults like that on little kids, they become psychological problems. And the kids are being thrust into situations. Maybe a decade ago, we redid the high school textbooks section on Islam. It was hell getting it through the Texas Depository. We waged numerous battles to get it through. The Republicans came in, which some of you voted for, and wiped it out. So that either this year or next, if Islam is mentioned at all, it'll be 2 sentences in the world history textbooks. The assault is on many levels, not to fear, and I do believe in love. I'm just not in love with my country right now. We need your help. You've got to monitor your kids, your grandkids going to school. You've got to monitor what happens to you in the public space. We can't move on anything unless we know what is going on. We also need for you to report good things that are happening in the public space. Where people we had a bunch of women fired because they were muhajirah, physicians especially, and along with the men, because non-Muslim women didn't want Muslim men touching them, just all kinds of stuff you would not believe, but it's across the board. So we need for you to work with us in all the ways that you can to be vigilant. And I'm going to ask that I'll put something out there. If you want to be in the online book club, let us know. Hiba will help me get a reading list. Tell me what you want to read. I am reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And your grandkids, what can I say? So would you please hurry up and write something? I think, let me ask you quickly, do you have any questions for me? What? I can't hear you.
Before you said something about
You know, the state of Tennessee tucked into another. She wanted to know about the state of Tennessee. The state of Tennessee, you know how bills go to Congress, right? They do that, whether it's the state Congress or it's the Congress. And what they're able to do is tuck little things in. So you have a referendum, and you've probably most often heard about referendums. And the thing is that Muslims pray in congregation. They often pray in public spaces. So the fears, and you can't downplay the fears, because the fears are real, because we haven't done a good job of explaining what Islam is and who we are. We're busy being apologetic, okay? Which doesn't work well here. But the state of Tennessee, in its state legislature, tucked in a fine plus jail, sometimes, depends, or a fine if you're caught making wudu in public. If the people complain, you're in a picnic space and they complain because you're making them afraid, they'll come and pick you up. Other states, given the Boston bombing, state referendum, and pieces of bills tucked into other places before Congress is enormous. Yeah.
You mentioned the folk story child. I was thinking about these that are surrounded by media and our society. One of the things that brought me closer to Islam was actually reading and analyzing the lyrics of songs as well.
She's so dainty.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm really glad that you mentioned the point about folk tales. I was thinking about music, movies, and media in general in our society. And one of the things that brought me closer to Islam was actually reading the lyrics and analyzing what the words actually mean, and sort of having that understanding of what we hear every day. And I was very intrigued. What is your recommendation in terms of going beyond just what our children read, but what we all every day are surrounded by in the media?
Well, I think that's where there are levels of activism. You know Rhymefest? You know Rhymefest? You know who Rhymefest is? What do y'all be doing? You know who what's Lupe Fiasco is? Huh? It's a wonder. 3 generations removed. I think what you have to do with the young men, and I do hang out with them, is I listen very, very carefully. I try to say something when I think it's going overboard. I think I listen to a lot of rap and hip hop, unfortunately. But I try to see where I can interject something. I think, like Amir Suleiman, and, there's one kind of venue where they've gotten it, and there's another kind of venue where the emphasis is on the social message. Okay? And they're not talking to you. And I'm thinking about one of Lupe's videos, and I will not repeat the title, but you know what I mean, bad. You know that one? And he's not talking to Muslim women. He's talking to non-Muslim women who don't understand how they act and how their children mimic the stuff. Okay? I think in being an activist, you have to interject. You know, young men come into my classes all the time with their pants hanging. And I'm on record, you know, if your pants is hanging, I will report you to the police for indecent exposure. And I do it all up and down the street. You know, you can't be in a neighborhood where young people without guidance don't get some from you. If they don't get it from you, where is it coming from? If you're worried about the harm they can bring to you, they're bringing it anyway. So you got to at least have your say before they do you. You know, and hope that they don't do you. I mean, that's horrible. But I mean, you really have to, in Chicago right now, we're doing, taking it to the streets. I don't know if you all have heard of taking it to the streets. But I'm a board member, and we work very hard with women coming out of prison, men coming out of prison. Most of them are not Muslim. They're folks out in the neighborhood, because that's what Muslims are supposed to do. We're supposed to be role models all the time. The object of Allah's mercy through us, we don't get to choose. You're always supposed to be giving it. You know, so if you hear, and some of those lyrics are really interesting, in an extremely misogynistic and violent culture, write the producer. You know, there are tweeting. You know, one of the grave embarrassments to me as an African American is the lyrics which talk about mamas and women. And I'm saying, you know, country and western doesn't even do this. Why y'all do this? You know, there is no other genre where women are spoken of so poorly. And you have to get there. If you don't get there, they think that your feet are patent too. You know, there is a generation of it's all relative. I'm not of that generation, fortunately. It's not all relative. You know, when the young ladies are in the streets with almost no clothes on, I do make comments. I do make comments of the young lovers on the street. You know, I'm not willing to pay for their bedroom, but I will make a comment. Because if nobody ever hears it, if nobody ever hears it, they don't have an idea that anything's wrong with it. Yes, Miss Cultural Anthropologist. Hey.
Okay, so I had a couple things that kind of stuck out to me. The one thing, well, just specifically, just what you were just talking about our older generation making it a point and the need to kind of check the younger generation and the things that they do as far as their external appearance and basically.
No. It's not just the older generation. You too.
That's what I was about to talk about. Is and it being necessary Islamically, especially with Muslim women. I mean, Muslim men have their own struggles, so we can't speak of that at this particular event.
They talk about you.
I mean, but at the same time, we're not in an apt enough position because they have their own struggles and their own things, and as Muslim men, we can speak about it, but we're not in a position to properly judge or even, you know, we can discuss. MashaAllah, sister, MashaAllah. MashaAllah. In my opinion, generally. Okay. So anyway, what the point that I was making is, how do we empower each other as young as my generation, the younger sisters, to have that ability to get through to each other in the sense of and even with Muslim women and non-Muslim women. The main thing that I wanted to talk about was in which you were speaking about the policy. And is that policy is really big in today's society as far as when you really want to get something through to government officials and to the people that this is serious, this is our way of life and our culture. And how do we organize each other just in the sense of just talking about the school district of Philadelphia and the different things that's being done to the teachers and students and extracurricular activities. And that's something that I'm really involved in trying to make people understand that fear is a stifling emotion. And when you let it really, revolve around yourself, you become ignorant and you have an ignorant is bliss mindset. And how do we organize each other as Muslims, as Muslim women? With our numbers, we have the quantity, but the quality isn't always there. How do we organize and create policy that'll stick and influence?
I don't think you can create policy, but you definitely can influence it. And I don't think that Muslim women have nothing to say about Muslim men. That's cute. No, I mean, it's that my husband is an imam, much to the chagrin of the community, because he's married to me, and I have a lot to say through him, and he won't go anywhere unless I get him to make sure he got what I have to say. I think that Muslim women have a lot to say, and I'll end with this. We are not the adversaries of the men who brought us into the world, or who are our husbands, or those who we bore. Okay? We're not their adversaries. Those that we marry are supposed to be garments for us. Those who we give birth to are supposed to love us to death. Right? And our fathers generally do. And it's supposed to be a conversation. It's always a conversation. Both of you trying to get to gender. And whether you wind up in the suburbs or dead square in the center, you're both working to get it toward the same place. So it's not that you're not saying what's best for each of you all the time to one another. So I don't think that women, and I don't know about, I've seen Philadelphia's school system is no different than any other school system. Parents have a say. They influence policy in local schools. If you got kids or grandkids, get in the school. Make your voice heard. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum.